Okay, we're heading up to 7:59. At 8 o'clock, we will begin.
Okay. I didn't print this out big enough, so I'm using a magnifier.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
I
Now
thought
that's
maybe
some
I could
tech.
hide it, but I'm obviously not.
So you didn't memorize it, Kay?
Oh, I'm sure I could, but just to make sure I'm using
Yeah.
that. Yeah. The last minute's going slow.
There we go.
All right.
It is 8 o'clock.
Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and guests. Thank you all for being here to listen to our presentation tonight. Just a reminder, this is being recorded, and our I will get this. And I'm going to also say at the end, in case we don't have time, the last 10 minutes will be questions, so put them in the chat, or you can raise your hand at the end. But remember that there is another series of talks right after this one, right on the hour. And also tonight, there's karaoke night, so don't be afraid to go in, sign in to an RSVP in your agenda so that we can hear all of your beautiful voices. Becca May is a member of the Powerhouse Toastmaster Club in Grand Forks, North Dakota. She has been a Toastmaster since 2020. However, she's been speaking since the age of 15. Although Becca is, oh my goodness, I can't believe I did this. Although Becca is a senior graduating in May from the University of North Dakota, studying geology and environmental studies. I'm glad somebody does that, Becca. Kim Broekemeier joined Toastmasters in 2010 and is reminded of her previous speaking when she was in high school. And she just wanted to get back into what she did way back. She says way back in high school. I don't think it's that far back. They are with us today to talk about what they did in level 4 and 5, hopefully what we can do in level 4 and 5, and maybe even do a little sharing if there's time. So help me welcome Becca and Kim. Yay.
Becca's going to share her screen here. Can everyone see it? So tonight we're going to go through levels 4 and 5, mainly the electives, and we're going to go pretty fast. But just remember, these recordings will be out there for the next 30 days. And you can always reach out to Becca or I, and we'll share the PowerPoint with you as well. So tonight's goal is to take you from scared or frustrated to calm and ready to work through your levels 4 and 5. But the real goals are to understand the purpose of levels 4 and 5, gain knowledge of the electives in each level, and to motivate each other to complete levels 4 and 5. The purpose of level 4 is to build skills that you need to succeed, explore new challenges, and apply what you've learned. Your path will have a project that is specific to the path and then electives. So for example, level 4, project 1 example for team collaboration, and this gets kind of small on our screen, but the purpose is to motivate team members. So you're going to complete a project that helps you motivate team members. And then after that project is done,
Is Kim frozen or is it me?
She's frozen.
Froze.
Okay. I'll give her a quick second.
On a lighter note, she's not making a weird face. You know how that always happens.
Usually always happens.
Yeah.
I think I can improv for her in the meantime. Looks like maybe she was disconnected. So in the meantime, as she was kind of saying, the main project in level 4, the first project in level 4 is to kind of start applying those skills to some sort of team building or motivational strategy or leadership activity, where you've taken everything that you've learned from levels 1, 2, and 3 and really try to start applying it to real life situations, for example. And so that's just the first mandatory project of level 4. However, level 4 also comes with a whole bunch of electives that you get to choose from. And these electives vary greatly, and it can kind of be hard to navigate which electives you want to choose. So what Kim and I plan on doing today is really breaking down those electives so they don't feel so overwhelming potentially to you. So the electives, is she back?
Yeah.
Okay. Kim.
back. Go ahead.
So I'll just keep going. I think you know where we are, Kim. The electives available in level 4 are create a podcast, building a social media presence, managing a difficult audience, writing a compelling blog, managing online meetings, question and answer session, public relations strategies, and manage projects successfully. So what Kim and I are going to do again is break down each of these electives for you so they seem a little bit more manageable. So for the first elective, creating a podcast, I actually did this one in one of my level 4s of one of my pathways. And so the purpose of this elective is to introduce you to the skills you need to organize and present a podcast. The requirements are a minimum of 60 minutes recorded. Each separate episode must be at least 10 minutes long. So you must at least basically have 10-minute episodes. And then after all the content is recorded, you need to play a 5 to 10-minute segment to your club after a 2 to 3 minute introduction of the podcast to your club. So for this one, I actually did this one because what I did is I incorporated my life with this particular elective. So it just so happened by circumstance, actually, that I was around level 4 or getting close to approaching level 4 of Toastmasters when I was approached by my boss. So I worked as an ambassador for the College of Engineering and Mines. That's where I'm graduate. That's the college that I'm graduating from in UND. And I used to be an ambassador to try to recruit people to be in the engineering department. And my boss had asked me to co-host a podcast for the department. And I kind of thought about all of the different options and possibilities that this would bring me, and Toastmasters was one of those. So what I did is I incorporated my work life and I incorporated my passion and my education all into this one project. And essentially I ended up creating a 7-episode podcast with this other engineering student and had a really fun time. And I learned a lot of valuable skills of how to create a podcast. So if that opportunity might pop up, or if this is something you're really interested in, you might want to start going down this hill and pursuing something like this.
Building a social media presence. So there's a lot of different social medias out there and a lot of different platforms that you can use. The purpose is to gain an understanding of social media to enhance an established or a new social media presence. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to go on social media, whether it be Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, I'm losing concentration here to think of the other social media platforms. But you're going to put your own personal stuff out there. You can make it business. You can make it about Toastmasters, as long as you have the okay of your VPE. You can make it all Toastmasters. You can make your own Toastmasters webpage. And when you complete it, there'll be a project completion form, and you do a 5 to 7 minute speech. So like I said, there's a lot of different platforms out there. You just have to find the one that works for you. LinkedIn is another one that comes to mind that's more of a professional one, and it would look really good. Meetup would be another one where you could use to promote whatever you are promoting.
So the next one is managing a difficult audience. So the purpose of managing a difficult audience is to practice the skills needed to address audience challenges when you present outside of your Toastmasters club. The requirements are presenting a 5 to 7 minute speech on anything you want, but the requirements of this speech is that before the speech, you need to assign roles to certain members that you choose of the Toastmasters club to perform various interruptions during your speech. That could be, if it's a Zoom meeting, my team or my club meets virtually still. So one of those interruptions could be having a person unmuted, which I'm sure has happened to all of us at some point when you're talking and someone is unmuted and their baby starts crying, or their spouse starts saying, hey, you got the fries in the oven, don't forget to grab those. And so there's tons of interruptions that we come across every day. I'm coming across tons of interruptions right now as there's tons of students walking across talking and distracting me. And so this elective really allows you to just be able to handle interruptions, because it's something that we're going to deal with all the time, and being able to work with those interruptions and move past them professionally is something really valuable that you can use. So you could come up with a whole bunch of different ideas, whether it's in person or virtual. There's going to be interruptions regardless, and this is going to be something you can gain a lot from.
Writing a compelling blog. The purpose of it is to review or introduce skills of writing and maintaining a blog. So again, there are platforms that you can post the blog on. And what the requirements are is that you maintain a blog and post at least 8 times in a month. Then there's a blog evaluation form that you'd fill out, a project completion form, and a 2 to 3 minute speech on your experience. So you can use a new or an established blog, and you want to make it things that you're really passionate about, that you know a lot about. Because if somebody comes back and asks you a question or makes a comment on the blog, you want to be able to answer those questions and comments. So I would suggest that if you are looking at doing a blog, that you write at least 3 or 4 of them before you ever start posting. And then you'll be able to get a good feel for what people like and are interested in, and that can compel you to complete the rest of your blogs.
I also did write a compelling blog, and to add on to you, that's exactly what I did, Kim, is I wrote about my life as a geology and environmental studies student. And so again, I think what we're really trying to establish here is incorporating either your passions or your work life with Toastmasters to really make it a little bit more manageable, because if you try to do something you're not passionate about, it's going to be a lot more difficult. Managing an online meeting. So the purpose of managing an online meeting is to practice facilitating an online meeting or leading a webinar. The requirements are conducting a 20 to 25 minute online meeting with fellow Toastmasters, or a 20 to 25 minute webinar. And this one, I think, was created before COVID-19, because I think online meetings probably weren't as popular before COVID-19, but here we are today doing a virtual online meeting. However, I think there are certain people who could benefit from this more than others potentially. So if you feel as though you're uncomfortable with technology or you're uncomfortable with hosting an online meeting, this might be a really good opportunity for you to jump out of your comfort zone a little bit and really try to learn something new. So this kind of comes down to the individuals themselves. For me personally, I'm a Gen Zer. Technology comes to me like that. But I know that there's other individuals who feel really, like my dad is super technophobic and he's like, I can't do that. How do I set up a Zoom meeting? And if you feel that anxiety or you feel that fear, then this might be a really good opportunity for you to be able to get a handle on this. And you can reach out to other individuals in your club who do know or who do feel comfortable with online meetings and say, hey, could you show me how to do this and really help me make this a great online meeting so I take the most out of it. So a couple of ways you could do this is to be a Toastmaster for an online meeting. So again, my club only meets virtually still. So, I mean, what you could do is you could just be the Toastmaster and set up the Zoom link, send it out to everybody, and then be the Zoom host for that meeting, which essentially means you make sure people are on mute, you make sure that there's no distractions with people's video, you manage the chat box. You're essentially doing what, I forgot her name, you're doing what, Atina, is that your name?
Atiana.
Atiana, I apologize. You're basically doing what Atiana is doing today.
So Becca, could you do a speech contest if you put a speech contest on for the area or division?
That would be a great idea.
Yes.
Oh, and then one other thing I wanted to say is you can get practice with, for me personally, I'm really familiar with Zoom, but one thing I'm uncomfortable with is GoToMeeting. So there's possibilities for everyone out there. Like I could do a GoToMeeting and try to get comfortable with that software that I'm not comfortable with. So there are still opportunities, even if you think you're super comfortable with technology, you can still grow.
Question and answer session. I think this may be one of the easiest ones to do. And I've seen quite a few members do it. The purpose is to learn about and practice facilitating a question and answer session. It only has to be 15 to 20 minutes, so it's not a long session. Like our meeting tonight, we have a 10-minute question and answer session. All we'd have to do is expand it a little bit and we'd complete this goal. So we select a topic, we write and present a speech. Following the speech, we have a question and answer session. It's that simple. So again, share your passion. Keep it detailed so people have questions to ask you. And then think about possible questions and answers before you get into the session so that you can think through how you would answer some of those questions. Are there any questions?
The next one is public relations strategies. The purpose of public relations strategies elective is to practice the skills needed to effectively use public relations strategies for any group or situation. The requirements for this are to create a public relations plan for a real or hypothetical group or situation and explain what you learned and or how and what you might apply this to in the future. So I have not done this one, but I think this one you could get really creative with and you could spend a lot of time and really get a lot of value with this. So again, what I'm trying to emphasize here is apply your passions to this elective. Go for a volunteer organization if you're a big volunteer person, or if you're more into your job, try to find something you could do to boost your job recognition or your workplace. So for example, what I might do is I am a big bird person. Kay had mentioned earlier that my birds aren't here. I'm sitting at the university and my birds aren't here, but I take care of surrendered birds. And oftentimes these birds come with really severe disabilities, whether it be behaviorally or physically. I have one of the most aggressive birds I've ever seen in my life in my house at this moment. And I either foster them or adopt them and take care of them. And the facility that does this, that takes in the birds, is called the Center for Avian Adoption, Rescue and Education, CARE, which is this little logo right here. And CARE does a whole bunch. They take care of the birds. They try to do PR on Facebook, try to do all of these things. But if I wanted to apply my passion with Toastmasters, I definitely could take the opportunity to approach CARE. They know me pretty well at this point because I've adopted 3 of their birds. And I could say, hey, I really want to help you with your public relations strategies. This would help me in another opportunity. And I would really like to help the birds as well as your organization and myself. And if they allow me to take on that opportunity, that helps everybody in the situation. And I get to learn a little bit about public relations because that's not something I'm familiar with either. So that's just an idea that I came up with. That's something that I would personally do. So you can try to apply that to yourself as well.
I think back on all of the public relations that I did for school fundraisers when the kids were young, and I'm like, oh, maybe I could go back. No, thanks. Managing projects successfully. The purpose is to practice developing a plan, building a team, and fulfilling a plan with the team. So, perfect example, a fundraiser, a volunteer event, a futures pathway project. So what you need is 3 to 4 people on your team. You create a project plan. The project plan has resources on the pathways on Toastmasters on TI website. Then you do a 2 to 3 minute speech about your plan. So that's like you're telling them the plan you created. You complete the plan with your team, and at the end, a 5 to 7 minutes about your experience. So I'm on the ambulance board here in Elk Point. We do a lot of fundraisers because we're trying to get a new ambulance barn. I'm going to manage the project of one of those fundraisers, and I'll definitely be working with at least 3 to 4 people, and we will make it happen.
That sounds like a good plan, Kim. So those were all of the electives available for level 4. So I hope Kim and I were able to break those down or make you feel a little less overwhelmed by the potential possibilities you have. So now we're going to move on with level 5. And the purpose of level 5 is to demonstrate your experience. So level 4 was all about applying it to maybe a real situation or a hypothetical situation, but level 5 kind of gets a little bit deeper. It makes you reflect on those situations and maybe apply them further. Additionally, you have to, I kind of said that, apply your knowledge to all levels to accomplish larger projects. I went backwards, sorry. So level 5, the example project 1 that you must complete before you can, well, not before, but before the electives are available, you can complete the project, the first project, and that is to focus on leadership and recognizing the need to adapt your style based on the situation and lead the people you lead. I apologize. So basically this one is really taking all of these things you've learned from all of these levels before and really trying to apply this and then reflecting on how you did and how others feel you did. And so that's all about what the 360 evaluation is. That has popped up for me multiple times in many of my speeches, doing a 360 evaluation. And that's just having your teammates, whoever you collaborated with, evaluate you based on your performance as a team leader. Just a potential project. This is for, I forget what pathway this is, but there's different projects for each pathway, but we're going to go into the electives a little bit more.
Yeah, this one was team collaboration. So that was my path, and that's why I could pull up the example of it.
So the electives for level 5 are ethical leadership, high performance leadership, leading in your volunteer organization, lessons learned, moderate a panel discussion, and prepare to speak professionally. So Kim and I are going to elaborate on these a little bit further. So ethical leadership. The purpose of ethical leadership is to develop a clear understanding of your own ethical framework and to create an opportunity for others to hear about and discuss ethics in your organization or community. The requirements are to define a framework of your personal ethics. Then you have to organize and moderate a 20 to 40 minute panel discussion about ethics, followed by a question and answer session. Then you have to review the moderate. I'm sorry, if you haven't done the moderate a panel discussion, it would be good to review that elective. I think it's available in level 4, right? Okay, thank you. Sorry, I just had to clarify. So this one is not one I've done before, and you can kind of start to see here how level 5 really makes you start applying everything you've learned a little bit further. And so what is really important to do, I've seen this, one of my professors has been putting this on a test, and it's take a breath and just work through it. And so this does probably seem pretty overwhelming, but I think the initial thing is to realize that this will take time, and there's going to be a lot of learning taking place throughout this experience. So what I would do in this situation is I would realize that this takes time. I would get ready to devote this amount of time. And I would try to realize that I'm going to learn a lot from this about myself, because I don't think most of us think about ethics on an everyday basis and how we feel about that. So I would make a list, that's kind of what the requirement says, is make a list of what you define your personal ethics as, and reflect on your actions in your everyday life and say, are my ethics lining up with my everyday life? Is my everyday life lining up with my ethics? What's reflecting and what's not reflecting here? And then take this time to realize what you see as important to yourself, and then apply that to others. And this comes with coming in with a really open mind. So you're going to have a panel discussion where you're asking other people about their ethics. And sometimes this can maybe seem controversial. And so this is a really good opportunity for you to recognize that people are different, and you have to sometimes accept people for their differences, even if that doesn't line up with yours. And so this is an opportunity for you to learn about your Toastmasters, for you to learn about yourself, and for you guys to be able to communicate this as a team. So this is really a big team building, team learning, personal learning experience. And so this is probably one of the most intense electives there is, I would say. But I think there really is, because of its intensity, there's a lot to get out of it.
High performance leadership. I think anybody who has a DTM is familiar with this, because they've done it in order to get a DTM in the old manuals. So the purpose is to apply leadership and planning knowledge to develop a project plan, organize a guidance committee, and implement your plan with a team. The requirements are to deliver 2 speeches of 5 to 7 minutes. One is the introduction and one is the conclusion. So we had that before in one of the other electives. Form and lead a team, and you need to meet at least 5 times, which I don't think 5 times is unreasonable to meet with a team. And there are multiple resources available for this project, and a lot of different ideas and possibilities. I Googled high performance leader in Toastmasters, and it had pages and pages of examples. So one of the examples would be to plan and lead a convention or a conference, start a club from scratch, a speechcraft, activities such as an area or division director, projects at school, work, church, and community that a team is involved in.
The next one is leading in your volunteer organization. The purpose of this is to apply the skills needed to successfully lead in a volunteer organization. The requirements are to serve in a leadership role for at least 6 months. They say employment is okay, but they prefer volunteer organizations. So if you feel as though your job is being a little overwhelming, but you still want to get this pathway done, there's room for you to wiggle around. Then after your 6 months leadership role, you have to ask members of the organization to complete a 360 evaluation of your leadership skills. Then you create a succession plan to aid in the transition after you leave this position. Then after all of this, you will deliver a 5 to 7 minute speech at a club meeting to reflect on your personal experience. So I did this project. And I wanted to use what I did as an example of what I'll just call fudging the lines a little bit. So at this point in my life, I actually did this last semester. So that was like December-ish of 2021. And during this time, I'm graduating very soon, and I've been applying to grad school, and I've been very stressed, but I've been trying to make Toastmasters also a priority. And this has been pretty tough juggle in my hands, but I've also been doing other things. So one of the things that I was doing is that I was helping one of my professors write a free online textbook. I wasn't getting paid to do this. I was just genuinely doing this because he said, hey, help me write this textbook. And I said, okay. But it took up a lot of my time. I did a lot of things for this, and I considered it volunteering to an extent. And so he wants to write more textbooks in the future as well, like this. And so I realized that although this isn't your traditional volunteering experience, and I don't know if it was a mixture of volunteering and work and school. So I combined them all. And again, here I am applying that, like trying to apply my life to these situations. And I asked my professor, his name's Becca, to evaluate me based on how I wrote the book, how well organized I was. It was me and 3 other students writing it, and I was basically the head leader. And I asked them, I was like, do you think I did a good job? And I didn't necessarily hand them the 360 evaluation, but I had a conversation with them, and I said, how do you think I did as a writer? How do you think I did as an organizer, as a leader in these senses? And so then I proceeded to write a speech on this, explaining my experience writing this book, working with my professor, working with other students, and then how it felt to basically spend all this time helping write a textbook to be published online and get this much credit for it. So it's something I was able to apply my life to, but apply Toastmasters to, especially in a really stressful time in my life. So that was kind of just like what I called fudging the lines. It wasn't traditional, but I think it counted and it got the job done.
Lessons learned. I think this is a very popular elective in level 5 because I've heard of a lot of people doing it. And I've heard at least 2 speeches with the lessons learned. So the purpose is to learn about and apply skills needed to run a lessons learned meeting during a project or after a completion. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to facilitate a lessons learned meeting. You're going to document the results. The 360 evaluation is going to be done for you. Lessons learned are going to be logged, and there's going to be a metric to those logs. Then a 5 to 7 minute speech is given. The possibilities for this would be a follow-up to a completed project, lessons learned that can be coupled with a previous group or group activity. So I might do it on the last training. And I learned a valuable lesson there in that you need to make sure that you have breakout rooms available when you set the meeting up. You can't do it after the fact. So I could talk to you about that for 5 to 7 minutes because it was quite embarrassing. And what we went through during the training to try and make it happen. And it just wasn't going to happen. So that would be an example of a lessons learned. And I would ask that others that were involved in that training do a 360 and keep a log and monitor what I had learned.
The next one is moderating a panel discussion. So the purpose of this is to apply your skills as a public speaker and leader to facilitate a panel discussion. The requirements of this is to plan and moderate a 20 to 40 minute panel discussion. The panel discussion may be of any topic and may take place at a club meeting or outside of a Toastmasters meeting, as well as long as it's verified by the VP of Education beforehand. This was another project that I did for my level 5, and I think it was very fun and very successful for everybody. So again, I'm a geology and environmental studies major, so I'm very familiar with energy systems and energy sources such as coal. What was my other one? Did I put? I forget. Coal, nuclear, and solar and wind. So coal, nuclear, solar, and wind. And I asked 3 Toastmasters in my club to participate in my panel. And there are no other environmental majors in my club. So I asked a medical student in the club, I asked an HR manager, and I asked a physics student to be in my panel discussion. And I told the HR manager that he was going to be the coal guy, the med student was going to be the wind and solar, and the physics student was going to be the nuclear, because I knew that the HR manager works for Mankota Power Cooperative, which is run off coal mostly. And the physics student is pro-nuclear, I know that. And then the med student, I just kind of threw them in there in the loop. And so I just told them to prepare themselves to talk about their specific thing as if they were really playing that role. And it was very entertaining and very successful. I wrote out a ton of questions and I asked each one of them specific questions, and the HR manager is very animated. And so he played the role as your typical whole supporter, I guess you could call it, very well. And he interrupted and he was quite rude, and he played the role very well. And so it was very fun, very entertaining. And I think it was beneficial for me as the panel moderator, but I think it was entertaining for the club. And I think it was fun for the participants as well. So this is something I would actually really suggest, and for you to feel a little bit creative with. Even if these people aren't comfortable with this topic, they can easily do research on these topics as long as it's pretty simple. You know, like there's lots of information on coal, nuclear, etc. So I really suggest this one because I was kind of hesitant about it and a little nervous, but I think people really enjoyed it. Sorry, I forgot this was going to pop up. So here was the meeting. So here's me being the panel moderator. Here was his name's Tanner. He was the nuclear guy. Jeff is the HR manager who supported coal, and Nathan was our poor solar and wind guy who got beat on by the HR manager pretty bad. So it was a lot of fun.
Managing a speech professionally. I don't know what everyone's goal is in Toastmasters, but I think a lot of people have a goal of being a DTM and possibly speaking in public a lot in the future. So the purpose of this is to practice developing and presenting a longer speech. The requirements are to use a speech outline worksheet and produce an 18 to 22 minute keynote style speech. The possibilities are endless. Speak about something you love. Use visual arts where they fit. Humorous, informational, any style that fits you. So I think a lot of times we see people start out with a joke in a speech. If that's not your style, don't do it. It'll fall flat. Look for your style and your presentation manners and make a professional speech, 18 to 22 minutes. Practice it on your club and then find somewhere to share it.
So in conclusion, I think it's important to notice and recognize that levels 4 and levels 5 take time. They are going to take a little bit of energy and a little bit of effort more than your levels 3, 2, and 1. However, when you attempt to tackle these levels, remember to incorporate what you're passionate about, what your job is offering to you, and your hobbies, because everyone at the end of the day will get way more out of it when you are into it, rather than if you dread this whole thing and say, well, I don't know how to do this, so I'm just going to try to get this over with and just choose any of these, and I don't even know what I'm doing. So it's good to approach it with a really good mindset and to approach it with something that will make you happy and make you proud at the end of the day. So don't get overwhelmed. Take it one project at a time and just break it down. One other thing that I didn't put on a bullet point is I started looking at levels 4 and levels 5 as soon as I got a pathway to know what I needed to prepare for. If I knew that I needed to be a leader in a leadership position for 6 months, I made sure to think in the back of my head, I should take on some sort of position so I can get this pathway or project done.
So we wanted to leave the electives up. So if people had questions on a specific elective, we could go to that. So Kay, I think we're ready for our question and answer session.
All right, I think the main question that was in the chat is people wanting to know what paths you were actually in when you were doing these.
I was in, sorry, I wasn't sure who was going to go first. I was in, my first pathway was dynamic leadership, and my second pathway was strategic relationships.
Okay.
And mine are strategic relationships and professional presentations. I think that's what it's called.
Yep.
Presentations.
I think that's the questions in chat. Does anybody else have questions? Go ahead and raise your hand and we'll just call on you.
All of the electives are the same in every path, but every path has a specific one project that you would start out with.
Okay.
And those projects are bigger projects that do take time, but they can also be crossed over and used for other projects as well.
Good point. So in a podcast, where do you record that to? You said you record them to where?
So Keegan was my co-host and he did a lot of the technology, but what he did is the university actually provided us with, you know, all of the equipment. So we didn't actually have to put any funding into this, but I think we were able to buy a pretty cheap recording software. Truthfully, I was not the technology person in that team. I was more of the designer of the content and he was the technology guy. So I'm not exactly sure what software he used, but then after we recorded it, we would upload it on Spotify. And Spotify is like a music streaming, it's a pretty popular music streaming app. And so that's where we uploaded it to. As for like all of the recording information, truthfully, I'm not too knowledgeable on that subject.
So if I were to do a podcast, I don't have to put it on my Facebook for everybody to see.
You wouldn't have to put it on your Facebook. You could upload it to Spotify. I mean, in order to do a podcast, it's more traditional to upload it to some sort of streaming source like Spotify or Apple Music. So it's not traditional to upload it to like Facebook.
Yeah, because I don't think I'd want anybody to see it.
It's a little embarrassing, especially when you have to hear yourself talk. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I sound like that.
When you do a high performance leadership, does it have to have a certain number of Toastmasters on that team?
I don't think it's specified.
I know
Yeah.
for myself right now, I'm taking over the Memorial Day service that's going to be coming up, and I was thinking I could use that, and I'm thinking, oh, I don't have anybody from Toastmasters on my team.
Yeah, all you need is your VPE's approval, you know, so that they know what you're doing. And if they approve it, go for it.
Okay. Anyone have any more questions? Don't be bashful.
I'm going to add a little bit to the podcast. I'm a member of the North American Renders Association, which is through my work, and I'm on the communications committee there, which was kind of a stretch for me because I'm not a real communications person, but we've started doing podcasts. So what we're doing is recording them on a Zoom meeting with the host and, you know, 2 or 3 panelists. And then we have a person who edits it and adds graphics and that type of stuff. We put it on Spotify. We also have it on our website and on YouTube. And YouTube is where it gets the most hits. So a podcast doesn't have to be just talking. It can be visual too.
Anyone else? This
Yes,
has been-
actually. Oh, I'm
yeah.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
This is,
Angela.
hello, everyone. Yes, actually, I wanted to share something on that topic too, just as a creative option for one of our training challenges. In our corporation, we did a podcast instead of, a traditional type of training. It was for a product enhancement, and we treated it more like a podcast. So there's different ways that you can think about it, to tackle some of your common challenges that you might have, just as another way of delivering the material, just thinking outside the box.
This has been extremely interesting, and I know the next email I'm sending is to you so that I get your PowerPoint, because this has been outstanding. Thank you so much for doing this, Kim and Becca. It's been wonderful.
I think what gets hard is when we go in and we look at our path and we look at each one, there's a lot of information there. And so we tried to break it down into manageable bites so that you could figure out what you were interested in and to go with it. And then realize the ones that could be doubled over, you could use them for more than one elective, and how long it's going to actually take you to get it done.
It seems to me like managing a audience that isn't being cooperative is way easier than a lot of these others. I often think, can you do that for every one of your paths? But yeah, you wouldn't grow by doing that. But that seems like almost too easy in comparison to some of them.
Yeah, some of them can be really tough, that's for sure. But again, it's assessing what you're willing to take on in your life. If you're really have a lot of time and you're like, I think I'm ready to take on something like ethical leadership, or, there's just times where you gotta work with what you have. And that's okay.
That's right. Love to hear from the rest of you if you have a question or a comment. We have just a couple minutes left.
Just
And
real quickly, I would like to just add something in that I was dynamic leadership level 5. I did the prepare to speak professionally one, and I had to speak for 18 minutes. And I thought, how am I ever going to speak for 18 minutes? And you know what? It just flew by. And it's amazing the skills that you learn throughout the whole pathways that helps you to get there. That's all I had to say.
yeah,
And that's what these levels are about. It's bringing it all together and making things happen.
well, thank you so much again, and we appreciate it. Do we just go away now?
You just go away now.
Do we just leave the meeting, or what do we do?
Yes, if we are concluding the session, we are at 8:47. I'm going to stop the recording,
Okay.
and I will end the meeting, and everybody will leave the meeting when I do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Right.
you.